All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. It is a delight to be here with you and with Dr. Jacob Diaz. Welcome, everyone. My name is Daniel Pasco Aguilar, founding director of the Center for Social Justice and Chief Diversity Officer at Excelsior University. We are thrilled to have you with us today. So Excelsior University's leadership, the Center for Social Justice, and the Race and Ethnicity Rope Team welcome you to Excelsior's celebration of this year's Hispanic Heritage Month. For those of you who are not acquainted with Excelsior's rope teams, we have 11 and soon we'll have 15 communities we call rope teams that we describe as representation and support villages around our students based on the dimensions of identity that matter to them and to allies. If you want to learn more about rope teams or how to engage with them, there's a lot of opportunity. You can visit them at communities.excelsior.edu, or you can contact the Center for Social Justice for more information. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Jacob Diaz, an amazing leader in higher education, a wonderful colleague and friend, and currently Regional Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Success and Dean of Students at the University of South Florida's St. Petersburg campus. So our neighbor down here, as we broadcast this from our new Excelsior St. Petersburg site. Thank you for visiting us this afternoon, Jake. We are truly honored to have you. And before I introduce you formally, though, I have the pleasure of introducing Erin Koppel, Chief Communications Officer at Excelsior University, who has kindly offered to say a few words about Hispanic Heritage Month. Erin.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Dr. Diaz, for being with us today. And thank you to everyone who's joining us today for this wonderful keynote. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month this year, we honor the rich history, culture, and contributions of the Hispanic community. From September 15 to October 15, we'll recognize the achievements of Hispanic Americans who've shaped our nation's history, fought for justice, and paved the way for future generations. This year's Hispanic Heritage Month theme, All Together, Uniting Forces to Combat Systemic Racism, resonates deeply with the keynote conversation that we're hosting this afternoon. Dr. Jacob Diaz's inspiring discussion, Amplifying Narratives in the Academy, highlights the power of storytelling in the Latin community and the importance of representation, mentorship, and creating spaces for Latin leaders to thrive. Dr. Diaz's personal journey is a testament to the impact of systemic barriers and the need for inclusive communities that value dialogue, curiosity, and belonging. As we reflect on whose stories we are missing and how we can help amplify the voices of the next generation of leaders, we're reminded of our collective responsibility to support the Hispanic community, leverage their brilliance in our efforts to do better, and promote their rights. By engaging with Dr. Diaz's keynote, we'll explore ways to further support Latin students and leaders, moving beyond token inclusion and fostering meaningful support of underrepresented students. Let's unite forces to combat systemic racism and to ensure our collective success. Thank you for joining us today in celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month and in our efforts to amplify the narratives that shape our community. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Erin. So before we pass the microphone to Jake, I want to thank a number of people and units that made today's event possible, starting with Maria, Courtney, and Nyla from marketing, Erin, Stacy, Jason, and Connor from communications, Michael from Transformative Partnerships, Christina from our St. Petersburg site, Amanda from Project Management, Jamie and Mackenzie from Development, Chris from ITS, our President and Cabinet, and Jill and Lori from the President's Office. Thank you so much for your amazing partnership and support. We wouldn't survive a day without you. And also, at around 3:45, we will have time for a brief discussion about the contents of today's session. So please, throughout the session, think of questions and input them in the Q&A space for Erin and me to bring them up to Jake. And if interested, indicate that you would like to be elevated as a panelist to ask your question visibly and verbally. And now I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Jacob Diaz. Dr. Jacob Diaz is a nationally recognized student affairs leader whose career spans nearly 3 decades of advancing student success, equity, and belonging in higher education. Raised in a bilingual home in San Diego, California, and as a proud product of the California Community College system, he brings both lived experience and professional expertise to his work, demonstrating how education can transform lives and open pathways to possibility. Currently, serving as Regional Associate Vice Chancellor of Student Success and Dean of Students at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg campus, Dr. Diaz provides strategic vision and executive leader for student life and engagement, for residents' education, and for the University Student Center, while also serving as Deputy Title IX Coordinator. As a leader, he is deeply committed to building trusting team dynamics, amplifying the professional successes of his colleagues, and centering the student experience at every opportunity. His leadership is characterized by collaboration, innovation, and care, grounded in a philosophy that students thrive when they are part of a community that values dialogue, cultivates curiosity, and ensures belonging. Beyond campus, Dr. Diaz extends his service to the broader community as Vice Chair of the Board of First Contact, connecting students with critical health and human services. His contributions have been recognized nationally. He was honored as a pillar of the profession by NASPA in 2020 and has participated in prestigious leadership programs, including the AASCU Millennium Leadership Institute and Harvard University's Management and Leadership in Education program. Dr. Diaz earned his BA in English Literature from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and both his MED, Master's in Education, and EDD from the University of Vermont. His award-winning dissertation, Marginalized Narratives in the Academy, One Chicano Story of His Journey in Higher Education, reflects his enduring commitment to storytelling as a means to elevate underrepresented experiences and inspire institutional change. Across every role in his career, Dr. Diaz embodies the values of community care and student-centered leadership, advancing a vision of higher education that is accessible and provides opportunities for all to succeed. To give you just a tiny example, but very direct for our experience, Jake kindly offered to donate his Keynote honorarium to support our initiation of our St. Petersburg site food pantry. So Jake, thank you. You are a role model and an inspiration. And thank you for honoring us with your presence and presentation today. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for hosting me and for the gracious invitation. It's really special. And particularly as we kick off Hispanic Heritage Month, I really liked the introduction of why this is important to Excelsior University. So thank you for framing it in that way. So good afternoon, members of our Excelsior University community. I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for this invitation, and probably more importantly, thank you for the work that you do every single day. The title of my talk today is Why Education Matters, Why What You Do Matters. Because the truth is, we are living in intense times. Our students carry so much: family responsibilities, jobs, financial pressures, and the uncertainty of a world that many times feels like it is shifting under their feet. And yet, despite that, students continue to pursue their degrees, their hopes, and their dreams. They continue to believe in their own futures, and they do that because of places like Excelsior University. But I think especially because of you as educators. In today's higher education system, we are facing times that are challenging, no doubt. In the last 20 years, higher education has responded to health pandemics, economic uncertainties, political tensions, and yet there remains a strong need for educators and leaders like you who continue to hold these tensions and uplift each student that you serve. With this in mind, I'd like to share a few stories that I hope highlight why what you do each day makes a profound impact at a very important time in our history. My own journey is shaped by who I am, a proud Mexican American, the son of parents who worked hard, sacrificed much, and instilled in me the belief that education was something to be cherished and transformative. As we gather today to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, I'm reminded that this month is about more than recognition. It is about honoring the journeys of millions of families who believed in education as the path to opportunity. My story, like those of so many of the students that you serve, is one of both obstacles in life and hope and possibility. As a first-generation student at Southwestern Community College, I was still unsure if higher education would in fact be truly for me. That changed the day I walked into Professor Stanley James's class. He would be the first person of color I would meet with a graduate degree, and he stood in front of us with confidence and conviction. He looked around the room and said, "Each of you can go to a university and succeed if you do your part. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." He also stated, "Go to the archives and learn the story of your ancestors. Take the time to really understand the origin of who you are and know that you belong in any place you set your mind and heart to be." In that moment, a seed was planted. I realized that maybe I could transfer to university, that maybe a bachelor's degree and even a doctorate may be possible for me. His belief in me changed how I believed in myself. And I think this is what belief does. It lights a path where before there seemed only to be obstacles. For the students you serve, many of whom, like me, balance responsibilities, doubts, and identities, your belief in them is everything. Hispanic Heritage Month is not only a celebration of culture, but also a recommitment to breaking barriers so students don't just enter college, but in fact thrive and graduate. Excelsior University's mission to serve working adults, first-generation students, and diverse learners embodies that responsibility. Belief unlocks possibility, but as you know, possibility can be tested when life becomes complicated. What happens when crisis enters a student's journey? And this is where my second story comes in. Years later, as a graduate student at the University of Vermont, I had never felt my race and ethnicity more. I confronted racism and self-doubt head on, and it felt like on a daily basis. In classrooms, I sometimes felt invisible or tokenized. Comments and silences made me question if my voice as a Chicano, as a Mexican American, belonged in the academy at all. For a while, anger at racism fueled me. But one day I realized that anger alone could not sustain me. I had to choose something different, to trust my own story, to claim my Chicano identity as scholarship, and to affirm that my lived experience was not in fact a deficit, but a strength. How many of you can remember the name of someone who believed in you before you might have believed in yourself? That moment can change everything. Or what about that student you've worked with who surprised you, or who overcame more than you may have realized? I think that's the power of your presence in their life. Through my faculty, I not only learned about education as a system, but I began to really dive into the depth of my own story as a Chicano living in a United States context. Through the support of caring and intellectually brilliant faculty, I was prodded along to reflect on many of my own unquestioned beliefs and perceptions. The big questions like, who am I without the degrees? What impact do I want to make in the world? How will I work within a system that wasn't built to embrace the full range of human life in its midst? Over time, through writing, presenting, and deep reflection, all cultivated by my faculty, academic advisors, and student affairs over educators and my peers, I began to shape my own voice, and most of all, to trust it. I learned that telling my story was not only valid, but vital, that sharing who we are creates space for others to belong to. I learned that my story, among others like your own, belong in higher education because the system is in constant need of repair and evolution. It needs you to achieve the aspiration to ensure that, in fact, all students are well served. I really believe that I haven't achieved any measure of personal or professional success alone. My family reflects farm workers, business owners, auto mechanics, welders, and educators. And being Mexican American is so much more than the color of my skin. It represents the history of the people, of my own people, the soil that my grandmother and her sisters kneaded each day with their bare hands while growing up. My grandmother achieved a third grade education in school. Many would consider her to be uneducated by today's metrics. And yet, here was a woman who was bilingual, worked hard, and eventually served as a custodian for the superintendent of schools' office. She has told me the story of how, in her job, one of her many tasks was to shine the conference table and prepare the coffee each morning for the people that would arrive. As she silently observed the team of men arrive, she noticed their attire to be a white dress shirt and dress pants, and they appeared to hustle between the conference room and their offices throughout the day. She noticed as she cleaned their offices that many of them had diplomas hanging on their office walls, and decided that she wanted me, her grandson, to have that same opportunity. Many times she would send me an affirming card or encouraging word when we would see one another. Her first question always was, "How is school?" When I would get tired, she would always encourage me to keep on going. She somehow intuitively knew that it would lead me down a path of life that I hadn't yet imagined for myself. When she told me her story, she would conclude it by saying, "Mijo, someday I want you to be at that conference table and to have an office." And while she passed before I finished my doctorate, I can say to her that I proudly display the diplomas on the wall of my office today, to which I will remain forever grateful for. So why is all of this important? I'm here before you as the son of Mexican American parents who believed in me, even when they may not have always known how to guide me through the mysterious college process. I'm here as someone who has faced exclusion, but also experienced the power of belief, support, and belonging. And I'm here as evidence that when institutions invest in students, when they say, "You matter, you belong, and we will accompany you along the way," lives are transformed. It's not often that we receive a thank you from students, so I thought I'd share a concluding story that reminds me of my own purpose. So one day, very recently, I was at my desk doing my usual email and Teams chats when I received a knock at the door. In front of me was Martha, a graduate of our university who I learned began a career with a private corporation. After we spent some time catching up in life, she paused and said to me, "Thank you for believing in me." The stillness of the moment enveloped me as I absorbed her words. I found myself feeling very happy and appreciative of her thoughtfulness. What I'd come to think at times was me just doing my job had a profound impact on her. It reminded me that our everyday behaviors can, in fact, have a ripple effect far beyond what is imaginable. And I really believe this is what Excelsior University strives to do every single day. I think as we honor Hispanic Heritage Month, I'd like us to remember that education is both a gift and a responsibility. I think it's a gift because it can transform lives, families, and communities. And it is a responsibility because each of us, educators, administrators, alumni, and students, must ensure that the doors of opportunity stay wide open for the next generation. So today, I'd like to leave you with this. Every action that you take, no matter how small, echoes. That email you answer, the course that you design, the encouragement you offer, it may be the very thing that helps a student keep going. It may be the thing that keeps a colleague going. One day, I believe that somewhere a student will say, because of Excelsior University, I made it. And they even may say that because of you, I made it. And I can't think of higher praise than that. My own vision for students and their success is that every one of them, regardless of ancestry, age, or circumstance, has that feeling of being seen, that they feel supported and they feel honored. That institutions like Excelsior University continue to lead the way in creating inclusive, flexible, and empowering pathways to success. And that we as educators never underestimate the ripple effect of our work. And I think this story, like my own, I hope will ripple far beyond what we can imagine. Thanks so much for your time today.
Jake, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Such inspiring words. What a powerful journey. And we're so thankful that you have chosen to share it with us. Let me say back a few things that I captured that really struck me throughout. And then everyone, if you could think of questions or comments, we want to engage in conversation. We have the Q&A session space. And if you let us know in it that you'd like to be elevated, we can bring you up as a panelist and you can ask your question directly to Jake if that's what you'd prefer. So think of a question or comment as I read this. Belief lights a path when before there only seemed to be obstacles. Wow, the power of belief. Our learned experience is not a deficit, but a strength. How do we work in a system that was not designed to serve our diversity of community members? Higher education is in constant need of repair and evolution. Being Latin represents the history and resilience of a people. And our everyday behaviors have a greater impact than we imagine. Every action that you take, no matter how small, echoes. It may be the very thing that keeps a student or a colleague going. Wow. Thank you for sharing these gems of wisdom, Jake, and for sharing your experience. I have a question. or do we have anything yet?
Why don't you start us off, Daniel?
Okay, so as I don't think I need to explain or say much, right? The Latin community right now, in many instances, feel under attack, and I want to go to the rooftop and scream. It's very important to tell them that they matter. But not only because we have the moral responsibility of making them feel included, but because we need them. So as you think of your journey, Jake, and as you continue to encourage us as a leader in higher education, to think of the Latin community as an asset, right? As a need for us to, in truth, develop robust, complete solutions and innovation. What recommendations do you have for a university like Excelsior to serve our Latin community in the best of our capacities? Particularly now, right? Excelsior University is in a position that I have hardly felt any other university where I have worked or with which I have consulted. And we're designing our system. We're designing what we do. We're exploring new frontiers, hybrid education, partnerships, a constellation. I mean, we're innovating in a way that I haven't seen before. One of the things we need to keep in mind, right, as we are part of that design.
Thank you, Daniel, for that thoughtful question. So one of the things that over the past few years that I've been experiencing professionally, particularly as a resident of being in the state of Florida, has been, the legislation of education. And while that certainly has existed in the past, how we educate is called into question, restricted. What we can educate on is further and further restricted. And the reason that's the first thought that came to mind was, what got me into this work was in fact the opportunity to design inclusive spaces. And it's almost like when something is taken away, it's really challenged me to think about, well, then what is the next design? And I think what's exciting is as I've looked at Excelsior University's web pages, what's exciting is the way, in fact, you are attempting to design communities that speak to the full range of who you serve. And it's really, for me, if I'd love to see a time where I can confidently say to you that all students I serve are well served. I can't say that today. I couldn't say that 10 years ago. I think that's the horizon point, at least for me. My professional purpose is driven by this mountaintop that I may never arrive at, and that is, well, gosh, why can't we get there? We're smart people. And together, I think we can certainly achieve a lot more than any one person. And almost regardless of what policies and legal mandates are in place, there's got to be a way. And so I think for me, as you think about, I would say, as you think about who you're serving, how do you honor them? What do you think would make them feel like they're seen? What would have them feel like Excelsior's communicating to them that they belong? How does this happen in the virtual world? How does it happen in the hybrid world? How does it happen in the everyday we used to call them business interactions. I think sometimes that's where the wheels can fall off. The financial aid office, or the bursar, or the virtual counseling appointment, or just basic needs now, right? Which is why I really appreciate your efforts to launch a food pantry, because it's often on my mind that I sit in a tremendous place of privilege, which is to say I'm not thinking, or I'm not worried about where the next meal will come from. Well, gosh, I mean, if I'm in that space, it's often not just about food. There's other issues too. And so even that by itself, I think, communicates a value. And it's clearly in your mission and vision. Like, it was really exciting to see. So I think reaching for the vision and mission in many different ways is an opportunity. I think incorporating faculty. I think faculty are experts. I find that they will teach me much about how we can best serve all students. And then hone in on, okay, well then who are the students that we know based on all of our data, right? That we maybe have more gaps in achieving that degree, right? Because if our business is, in fact, to graduate students, then we would want to address the gaps that get in their way, that are ones that we create as leaders and educators within the organization. So then to do that, I think we can come up with some pretty creative ways to reach that student. And I think I find that I really am a big fan of Simon Sinek. And so I'm going to rob something from him for a moment. But, he talks about the infinite game, and how a finite game is one where it's like, I'm playing Daniel in checkers, and there's going to be a winner and a loser at the end. Most likely Daniel will win because he's super smart. And then that's it. And it's concluded. And then we play the next week. But education, I believe, is in fact an infinite game, that I hope that I'm making an impact for the next generation. So I think what's exciting about that in terms of the design is, what can you design as an institution located in multiple locations geographically? And the reach you have, at least my impression, the reach that Excelsior University has is exponential. So with that reach, then what could you design that says veterans matter, Latinx students matter, the first generation student matters, knowing that we occupy all those identities at times at the same time. But I think there's a way, right? Because I'm sure in the makeup of our colleagues, faculty, staff, students, they'll tell you, this is what works for me. And so I think I think I'm not suggesting it's simple, because I think every organization has its own way of addressing that. But I think it's making it a priority in a context right now where there's more stories about why we shouldn't make all people a priority. And so I think this is almost a way to be justice oriented, and to say, and for Excelsior University to say, oh, no, we're going to serve all of our students, and here's how we're going to go about doing it. So that'd be just a few thoughts I had.
Thank you, Jake. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I think we might have some.
Oh, Dr. Diaz, the questions are pouring in.
Okay. I love it.
Just that you're an eloquent storyteller. So thank you for sharing some personal stories with us today.
Absolutely.
And that someone believed in you and showed you a path that you didn't even know existed really resonated with me and had me reflecting on childhood experiences. But when I sat here listening, what's even more powerful, right, is that tenfold we can pay that forward now and be that light bearer for someone else's path. So thank you for that reminder. I think that's more important today than ever before. So a comment first from someone else on the call today. Thank you for sharing your experience. Very interesting and inspiring. I feel like I could listen to you for hours just to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Another coming in, as a higher education leader, how do you counsel fellow higher education leaders to create an environment that is welcoming to learners of all backgrounds? How do we create that space for everyone?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think the context of the conversation matters. And here's what I mean by that. I think that the way that it will play out in Excelsior University may look different and be different than, in fact, on the campus I occupy. And here's why I think that's important, because I think acknowledging the context in that we are having the conversation in as colleagues, for example, is important to say, what is it like here, wherever that may be, for my fellow leader? What's missing? For some institutions, they're really hitting it out of the park on certain dimensions of identities, but not in others. And so I think it's important to situate the conversation in, where do we have work to do? And sometimes that's kind of hard to do. At least I have found in the academy. I use it in air quotes, where you're supposed to know, or if you don't know, act as if you know. And I think that makes it kind of difficult to be vulnerable, to say, for example, as a dean of students, man, where am I missing the mark? The title in and of itself says dean of students. It doesn't say dean of the Latinx students or dean of some students. It says dean of all students. And so I'm in the same boat with you, that I'd love to be in conversation with a fellow leader, either on my campus or elsewhere, to learn, and also to have, well, then what could we do based on what we're missing? And what could we do meaning what can we learn from that's actually working really well? Because I venture to guess Excelsior University has strengths that it's doing really well, and has been since, I love that 1971, the reason that's important, that's my birth year. So it's easy for me to remember and important, but I think you didn't just start, right? And so there's part of this is, what's the legacy of success that you had that could be not copy paste transferable, but could inform how you serve another community that you see is struggling to access the full range of resources available at Excelsior University. What does that look like? And it's not about blaming someone who's maybe leading that area. I think that can be a conversation stopper. If someone feels like, you're coming in and it's all of a sudden you're the unsolicited consultant, people start to get worried, right? And, oh man, is my job on the line? And right now, more than ever, at least I've seen, people are worried. People are afraid. People are hurting and wondering about their employment. And so I think having those kinds of conversations is, for me, really, really beneficial. And is my colleague willing? I think that's important too, because if a colleague says, yeah, no, I actually like how things are, I think then, I really believe it's information, right? It's good to know. And then I think that's where it starts to bump up against then us as leaders to say, well, the conversation can't just stop there, right? I always like to say, there's not a period on the sentence yet. Like, no, the expectation, if you will, or the commitment expected at Excelsior University is that we improve in the following ways. I think it starts to really push the conversation in some new ways. But I would recommend starting with, where are we at today? What's working? What's not working? And I think inevitably I find a lot of ideas come out of that. So.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll go to the next question.
Sure.
You have a lot of experience in higher education, and the landscape is changing quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's in-person campuses, there's online communities like at Excelsior. Just overall, as you look at the whole landscape, what aspects do you think need to be improved in today's landscape?
That's a great question. So, across the landscape, these are things I worry about. I've wondered how affordable will what we offer online or virtually, will it be for that next adult learner or for the next graduating high school senior? Because no doubt, as you've all known, it just keeps slowly inching up over time. And I think that continues to be an access question. I think, what are the creative ways that we can source a student financially so that they, in fact, can access what we have to offer? Sometimes it has to be one credit at a time. Sometimes it has to be one class at a time. But I think for me, and I respect that, in fact, we also need to generate revenue. So that's real, like to keep the operation going. And so always balancing that budget is probably the tallest task. But I think we can lean on our mission because, and I think sometimes I will say, sometimes I forget that in our mission, it says, we're about educating all students. We're about access. We're about opportunity. Well, then I ask myself, well, if I'm Jake, if I'm really about opportunity, did I explore every option for this potential student to help them access this education? Or was it 5:30 in the afternoon and I was ready to go home? I mean, and I'm not suggesting we're martyrs and we put ourselves in harm's way. I guess what I'm getting at is, what would be my self-assessment at the end of each day? Did I really give my all? Because I think we all know. Was it cruise control today? Was it maybe a little more? Some days I feel like, man, I really wrung the towel dry and I gave. So I think the issues are like many, right? We've got access, financial affordability, ability of an institution to be welcoming, but also follow through on its commitment. I really feel like if we admit a student, that we're in fact engaging in a promise to them that we're going to see them through to graduation, as long as they do their part, certainly, but that they're not alone. And so where are we dropping the ball on that? I think that the orientation to how we address those problems, I think, needs to be at the center, because I don't know about you all, if I had a dime for every time someone told me they're student-centered, I'd be pretty rich. But I ask myself, are our services student-centered? Because I think that's a different question. It's like me saying, I'm committed to diversity, but is my service, in fact, reflective of that stated commitment? And so I think that continues to be, and I think it will be with us for many years forward, that's going to continue to be a big issue. I think no matter state or national leadership, I think presidents are wrestling with this. I think senior leaders are wrestling with this. I think all of us are wrestling with this of, gosh, but we're still receiving applications happily. We're still receiving tuition money happily. So I don't see any institution turning their money away. So I'm like, okay, well, with that in mind, how can we then deliver on what we're saying we're committed to? I think that's going to be with us for a long time. So yeah, there's some big issues out there, but they're worth working on, because I think they're going to outlast me. I didn't.
Dr. Diaz,
Yeah.
I love that distinction you make by, is this service student-centered? That's an important question as we build. Another question coming in from those on the call. You mentioned that education is a responsibility. Could you share how you've personally embraced that responsibility to create meaningful impact?
It took me a while. I think at some point it was like, well, my family really wants me to go, so I guess I should go. I think it became a responsibility when I then committed to, and I could see possibility, but I committed to trying to get a degree, because then it was all on me. I could choose how to, how much time I would focus on studies. I could choose what campus job I could apply to, or I could choose, amongst a whole range of different priorities, particularly as I became an adult learner. There's life, I think, continues to get more and more complicated, I find, as I get older. And so I think the responsibility for me has become very personal, because I could choose to be comfortable. But I think my grandma would be pretty ticked off if I did that.
We have to have angels on our shoulders.
I think whoever's the people or people in your lives that are good accountability buddies, I think for me, I couldn't just close the door behind me, because I think the gift, I certainly, like you, I'm smart. I figured out how to do school. There's a way, right? There's a way, there's tips, there's resources, but not everyone can do that. And so because I could, I then said, well, because I have that gift, the responsibility then comes, I believe, for me with it. So it was about, how am I mentoring the next generation? I've received much. How am I engaged in my own learning? Am I really truly a student of my craft? Am I engaging in the free webinars? I mean, there's tons, am I engaging in my network? Am I sharing my network? I will often say to colleagues who I know, to say, it does me no good to have a network if all I'm doing with them is keeping them in my jacket pocket. Network's meant to be shared. And I'm not saying foolishly. I'm just saying share it, because someone helped me. I tell you, every step of my career, someone helped me. And so I think the responsibility shows up in that way for me. I think it's important, because otherwise I think I would be incongruent with what got me here, which were other people who poured into me. And so that helps me kind of stay grounded when I find my ego gets triggered or I want to be right. I often will say, is it more important for me to be right or to be in right relationship? And when I can get grounded in right relationship, then I know it's more pure than, Daniel showed me, that, okay, I'm right. Well, yeah, that lasts a second. And then then I feel crummy. Like I don't feel like I'm congruent. So that's where it came from for me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. I think we have time for one more. I've got what I feel like is a final question, if you're okay with that, Daniel. Dr. Diaz, I'm really looking forward to your response on this one. What advice do you have for a younger generation looking toward the future?
That's a great question. I'd ask for forgiveness. Don't blame us too much. Don't blame us too much, and here's what I mean by that. I think the next generation, stick with it. I think that, our society, I think, needs you more than ever. What you're inheriting is a complex set of world issues that are just, really, really complicated. And how do we help you get to where you want to be? Because I think what we do as faculty and as leaders is help scaffold for the next generation. You know, how I mentor may not work for the next, 10 years from now. It may not work today, but how am I helping that person get where they want to be? And I want them to know that I'm in their corner, that it's not just a handoff, that, hey, here's all the climate issues. Have fun with that. Here's all the racial and gender inequities. Have fun with that. No, I was part of it. I'm a part of the same institution that is just as broken as, others, but did I try to make a difference for the good? And I hope they'll forgive that while there's been progress, it hasn't been fast enough. And so I hope that because of us, they have the tools they need to keep persisting to ensure that all humans are valued. And that'd be my advice, is stay anchored in your values and stay anchored in the truth as you know it. Because I think there's so much pressure to societally to maybe give up on it or accommodate. And not easy, right, to stay congruent or anchored in what you believe. But I have found for me, trusting my inner voice has never steered me wrong. It's not easy, but it's never steered me wrong.
What wonderful, wonderful advice, that inner voice and your own true values.
Yeah.
I know we are coming up on time here. This has been a wonderful discussion and so much engagement from those online. So thank you everyone who's been able to join us today. I'm certain you want to say a few words to help us finish out the discussion.
Yeah, let me go back to the beginning, Jake. You talked about belief, and that really struck me because thinking of the context, Gallup right before the pandemic administered a survey that identified that 87% of the world's workforce is struggling to find meaning in what they do. Then the pandemic happened, and that has climbed in 2024 to 77%, or has decreased to 77%.
Wow.
Which means that if we look at the global picture, right, we have only 23% of people who are engaged, excited, invested in what they do. And when I'm thinking of the Hispanic community and the brilliance that they bring to the table, the resilience that they bring to the table, belief is what could make or break their contribution, right? And their ability to feel part and to actually be part and make a difference, right? So I want to thank you for bringing that concept up, because I think that a significant portion of our role is not just to educate students on learning concepts and understanding whether equations or how to treat someone, or a lot of it is how to believe in themselves and how to learn how to help others believe in themselves.
Yeah.
How, as you were saying, how to keep on going, right? How to not give up because someone said something, or someone made a decision that affects them, or someone puts an obstacle in front of them, or doesn't believe in them. So I wanted to bring that up because I think that's such an important part of the conversation that we need to have, of the role we need to assume. And I'm going to finish with the last two things that you were talking about, Jake.
Yeah.
What or who are we missing? And there has to be a way.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that part of our challenge is to figure out how to believe that we can actually turn higher education into a system that does serve all community members, and to turn that resilience and stamina to us
Mm,
to find a way to make that happen.
mm. Thank you.
Those are my closing words. Do you have any closing words, Jake, before we
I think no closing words. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Jake. It's an honor to have you. Thank you, everyone who participated.
Thank
Erin,
you.
thank you for co-hosting
Thank
with
you for
me.
inviting me.
Of course, Connor, for helping us set all this up, and everyone we appreciated and thanked earlier. It's Hispanic Heritage Month. Think of it, respond to it. It's an opportunity, as Jake was saying, it is a responsibility, and we look forward to the continued conversation.
Thank you so much. This was special.
Thank you, Jake.